Welcome to the Consultants Way podcast, your go-to resource for all things professional services consulting. Brought to you by McMahon and Ransford, a strategy consulting firm with over 30 years of experience helping B2B organizations achieve sustainable growth, and the Consultants Way, the leading comprehensive consultant development program. Hosted by Dean McMahon and Anthony Paluska, we share expert insights, firsthand experiences, and conversations with industry leaders on the topics that interest you most.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of their employer, company, or affiliated organizations.
Welcome back to the Consultants Way podcast. Anthony Paluska and Dean McMahon. Dean, how are you doing?
Doing great. I always like to give a little weather update. We are officially left all kinds of good weather behind, and we are in the middle of summer.
I think we can just pin hot to every
hot and humid.
Every
we
podcast
really
episode
well.
from here forward, unless like a hurricane or something comes through, and then it'll be
then
hot and
wet,
rainy.
wet and humid.
Yeah,
We don't get away from humid.
No, we don't. But so we've got a great guest today. Kelly Doyle joined us, and we spent about 40 minutes talking to Kelly. Kelly, I mentioned this at the end. One of the things that I've really enjoyed about doing this podcast over the years now has been seeing people with a diverse set of backgrounds come into professional services and apply some of those different learnings to that. We, for whatever reason, I mean, just happenstance, right? We had a bunch of people like out of the education background that were on the podcast a couple episodes in a row in the past, and we've had people that have come out of sales and go to market. We've had people that have come out of all sorts of different things, and we've had others like this. But Kelly was intentional about trying to translate his experience in the military, in the Army specifically, to how he leads and how he develops leaders today. And I think that translation of experience one place and bring it into PS is something that's always beneficial to the audience. So I was excited about this conversation.
Yeah, I'm very good at that, and very thoughtful guy, right? Very deliberate, thoughtful guy, and very much about leadership. And I think that leadership, a term he uses, accidental leader, which I told him, as you heard, I'm going to use that. I like that. I have to pay him a small fee, but that's fine. But yeah, it's as important, and we've written a lot about it and talked a lot about it, and we do training on it. It's as important as any other skill, right? How to lead in a professional service firm when there's a lot of chaos going on. So I think it's a very exciting conversation, and I also think he delivers it in a very clear, easy to understand format.
Yeah, he's very organized about it. He tells a bit of a story about somebody named Martin, and I don't know if Martin's his real name, and I don't even know if Martin's real. I think Martin's real, but it's a great representation of an individual that I think. I mean, I certainly could relate to it, and people that I've worked with in the past. I know you could do the same, but I think almost anybody has seen people like that in the past. And we've all had people on our team, or we've been that person. And so I think the way that he told that story helps somebody that's leading an individual like that make sure that they can get them to the next level. Or if you find yourself in that situation where you're in a role that you're still trying to wrestle with, how do I do my old job plus my new job at the same time? How do you work through that? And Kelly gives us some great guidance on how to think through that from both perspectives. So I thought it's great, and excited to share that with everybody. So we will kick it over to us talking to Kelly right now. Well, we're really excited to have Kelly Doyle here today. Kelly, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
We're doing great. Thank you for joining us. So Kelly, we'll have done a bit of this on the front end, but I always want to hear it in your own words for the audience. Tell the audience a little bit about your background and your experience in professional services.
And could you start with junior high? I mean, I think
absolutely,
that's a fundamental.
I'll take a jump in the past before I get to the recent future. So, spent a fair amount of time in the United States Army. I was an enlisted soldier before I went to West Point. So I learned how to be led before I learned how to lead, which I think will come to play as we have further conversations here. But after my 5 years of service, really found myself in a number of operations roles, number of different industries. But for the past, I guess it's about 13 years now, been involved in technology around construction. So construction technology is the industry term, obviously, but um, all professional services oriented, right? Operations oriented. So spun up a consulting practice from just a few people, very low on revenue, up to a 7-figure practice in about 18 months. I'm not going to take credit for the boom of the organization. I built the framework that helped it get that way. Right. I had a bunch of great personalities who coincidentally had a podcast, and that's how we grew the social side of it and the advertising side of it. So I don't know if that's where it all started. I think you said you're trying to do things and give back to the industry, but it doesn't help business.
Yeah, Kelly, we're completely against podcasts. I just want to get that out on the front end. There's nothing been worse for the universe than podcasts, but other than that, it's fine.
Oh gosh! So it was a great opportunity to learn about construction technology when it wasn't even a thing, right? And which put me in an interesting position because as a consultant, you're supposed to be the smart guy in the room, right? Well, as long as I knew more than the folks that I was talking to, and we had to keep up with a lot of things. So it was a fun process to evolve with the industry and help folks dial into what was most important to them. And that's what I enjoyed about it, was teaching them how to figure out what they needed, not necessarily what they wanted, right? And then I had some opportunities to build a product as well, and at the same time, be a chief operating officer for both a product company and a services organization on the Microsoft 365 stack. Gave me a real opportunity to see the difference between product and service and how they work together, but are very different businesses, right? And then for about the past 3.5 years or so, led a professional services organization delivering software services consulting to capital project owners. So universities, healthcare systems, state and local government, big construction spend where they need to keep track of hundreds of millions and billions of dollars and all the chaos that goes with it. So we provided the technical and advisory services to organizations like that.
That's great. And so lots of experience across in the construction technology space, but doing very different kinds of things, working at established organizations where you're managing the team, working at the technology integration part of that, and then obviously building and supporting the growth of your own organization. But I want to go back to the very first thing you said when you started there, when you talked about your experience in the Army, and you said, I learned to be led before I became a leader. We do find that so many people, right, as they grow up through professional services in the traditional ranks, enter a leadership role, and they've maybe managed clients or they've maybe managed a project, but actually managing a practice and leading a practice is very different. Can you speak a little bit to that experience that you got in the Army and how that's translated to your leadership style today?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So in the Army, you don't necessarily get the chance to hire folks. You don't get to pick people and say, I want these folks on my team. You get assigned resources, to put it in business terms, and those soldiers are the ones that you lead. So you really have to learn on the fly. And they force you every year, 18 months to change to different jobs to, again, give that compressed under pressure learning, right? How are diamonds made? You put things under extreme pressure, and next thing you know, there's a diamond that pops out. So think of that's how the military is creating leaders. I think in our industry, growth is what ends up causing what I've called accidental leaders, right? They've done a great job on a project. Maybe then they get a couple of projects, but then they start getting lots of projects, right? And the technical expertise that goes along with it and the volume and velocity of work, now they're technical experts. They know how to push the right buttons to configure systems the right way, but not necessarily now take on the role of leadership. And I find that means they're trying to do two jobs at once, right? They're trying to learn to lead people. Oh, really? It's more like three jobs at once, right? Because they're trying to get the job done. Their charge is to make their client happy. They're trying to learn how to lead people, and they're trying to learn the mechanics of how to lead projects. It's different than leading people, right? You have your financial side of it. You have all your deliverables that you have to keep track of. It's fine when you're doing 2 or 3 projects. Now amplify that to 10 projects with a staff of pick your people. You have to learn how to delegate, right? And that pace oftentimes doesn't really give them the opportunity to learn how to develop. So somebody has to help them with that.
Yeah, how do you in take this in whatever kind of way you want, right? Put yourself in that position or put others that have worked for you in these different positions as you've helped them become leaders. So like either how did you do this yourself or how would you advise another to do that? But juggling those three different balls that you just talked about there is really challenging, right? And people tend to gravitate towards the one that they're most accustomed to and most comfortable with, and neglect the other ones. And it's not intentional; it's because there's just so many different things on everybody's plate. But you have to be intentional about making sure that you're applying the right level of focus and attention to all three of those different balls that you talked about there. How do you make that intentional and purposeful and do that so that you actually can become a great leader in this space?
Well, I think there's 2 things at play. First, that self introspection. You have to take the time to see your surroundings. Right. There was a term from my military days called a tactical pause. You know, you need to stop the fight long enough to see where you're at. Right. You need to understand the chaos because there's always chaos. And you also have to make sure where are the people that are on the other side of the barrel that you're pointing? Are they the right people? Or are you pointing inward? That's not a good thing, right? So these tactical pauses allow you to stay engaged, but you need to have an observation to know what's going on. Junior leaders really, I don't think, have the experience to know that and feel that. And then that there's always somebody in the organization that takes on too much work, right? And now all of a sudden your things start to slip. So obviously I've seen different people in different organizations, but that's what I needed to do as a leader, is to say, okay, take that tactile pause. Who is it that I need to develop so that they can get to the next level?
I think it's also complicated in this business because, we use the analogy, you're using a military, and I kind of use the analogy that you want the um, professional shortstop to know what to do with the ball when the ball's hit to them, right? And in professional services, I think one of the great things, it's done in front of the client, right? So we can't go back to corporate like a salesman and say, hey, they're pushing back on sales price and they're, blah, blah, blah. They want to know what your thought is right then. And when you grow to be a leader of that, if you don't understand the tactical pause, you don't understand what's really going on because you didn't get to experience it well yourself, then you end up on this either over structuring everything because I don't trust my people, right? Or just hoping for the best and using only technical resources. So it's a very complex moving thing when you become a leader, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've seen examples of both, and I've seen example of both at the same time. There are leaders in the organization that say, well, just give them more to do, they'll figure it out. They're smart people. They'll figure it out. Yeah, they'll figure it out, but at what expense? Are you going to upset your client because they can see that you're figuring it out on their nickel? Seeing that wasn't a good outcome. Or folks burn out or just throw up their hands because they're like, I can't do this. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, I mean, so often you'll have somebody that figured it out and figures it out so that by the time that they've you know scraped their knees and had all the bumps and bruises along the way of figuring it out for the organization and themselves, they say, hey, I don't want to be in an organization like this anymore where I don't have the support and the infrastructure to do that. Now I've demonstrated, so now I'm going to take all of that learning and all of those things and I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to take it where my skills are more appreciated, right? Something like that. So there is, right, a real, and I think you're speaking a little bit about this here, which is that junior leader level is it's our responsibility as leaders to help make sure that they get there with our support, right? Not just they get out there and figure it out. You'll learn to be a leader, right? This accidental leader concept. You might find yourself in a leadership role, quote unquote, accidentally or without the training to have got you there. but as leaders above them, it's now our job immediately to step in and make sure that we arm them with all the tools that they need to play that role successfully.
And I wish the problem ended at junior leaders, but it doesn't. We promote up, and we promote up, and we promote because we're growing, because the organizations don't often understand professional services and consulting, so they can't tell competent from accidental. Which, by the way, I'm going to lift that. That's a great way to talk about it.
Oh, it's I've removed all marks from it. It's yours.
It's okay. We'll pay a small monthly donation.
I won't oppose the check. Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe the best way to bring it together is through personification, right? So I've found people. I'll dial in on one person in particular, but this guy's name is Martin. Big guy, mountain of a man, right? When you're at a conference, the guy that you can see above everybody else, this is Martin. Power lifter. If you only knew him, he's a teddy bear. Make sure we edit that out, because if anybody hears about it, Martin's going to lose his edge right now. Great guy, right? Trusted by everyone, and could literally, his willingness to carry everything was amazing, right? Yes, boss. He's on it, right? With success, he got more. With success, he got more. Now he became a technical expert in 2 platforms. So now he has to develop himself within 2 platforms and develop his team in multiple platforms, right? Well, as the operational tempo of a professional services organization goes, well, now his junior team members that he was starting to get weren't able to develop because he needed to hit those client deliverables. He needed to make sure his clients were happy. He didn't want to fail. Great guy. But his junior folks, the people on his team, were not getting proper development because he was ending up doing their work too. He was trying to be opportunistic and do on the job training, but when it came down to it, he had a deliverable he had to hit, right? What was compounding that is, as he's doing their work to make sure the client gets their outcome, their deliverable, well, then information that needs to bubble up from an informational perspective to help us at the business level make executive decisions, it wasn't there, right? So our visibility became dependent upon one person who did not have the bandwidth to get it done, right? So now the man with the broad shoulders who could take on the world, he was swamped. Didn't want to admit it, but the outcome of his actions were that his junior teammates were not getting development because he was doing their work, and I was not getting information I needed to elevate to the executive level in order for owners to make decisions. Neither one is a good outcome.
I think we've all seen versions of this at different times. In this case, or maybe just kind of broadly apply it, do you think that behavior is driven more on fear, right? Fear of, hey, if I don't do it myself, I can't trust and inspect that it's going to get done to a level of quality that are my standards, right? And I haven't had the experience doing that. Or is it a lack of understanding of the value of the role of a leader, right? Where, like, hey, I've stepped into this new job and I know all the things I need to do at the level below me to add a lot of value, but I don't appreciate the complexity or the value that comes with making sure that I have the time to report up all the metrics so the business can run effectively and doing those kinds of things. So is it, and like with anything else, probably a combination of both. But I mean, do you, in Martin's case, right? Is it one of the other there, or would you attribute it to something else?
It was a combination of multiple things, but if I had to put one in front of the other, it was his pride.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to do everything just right. Okay, I get it. You're known for your customer satisfaction. You're known for that rapport. You're known for making clients, repeat clients, right? 70% of the work that we got was upsells by Martin and other folks in the organization because our clients loved the work that we delivered. That comes from high standards, right? But it's sometimes difficult at the as you're growing as that accidental leader to understand the value of why the information management is important too. because while he's saying, I need help, I need help, I need help, I can't see that he needs help because he's not giving me any information to feed that. So I can go to the ownership team and say, I need people. And they're like, but Bob over here has capacity on his, he's room for work. So he doesn't need more people. Bob just needs to do his job better. Well, Martin's not able to give Bob more work because he can't see that Bob needs more work because he's too busy doing Bob's work. And so it's a cycle. It's a vicious cycle, and that's where it's really where I needed to bring in the tactical pause.
Yeah, it's in some ways, right? It's having to redefine your definition of what success looks like and what you should be proud of. And it's no longer being proud of the client getting the outcomes that alone shouldn't accomplish what your standards are. Your standards are now raised to the client is able to get to the outcomes without me having to be involved, right? Which means now I've done all the right things to enable my team to do that. So take the Martin example a step further, right? You mentioned the tactical pause a couple of times. How or did you apply that lesson to him, and how did he take it? How did he use it? I mean, how did that fit into this story?
And we're implying that you were able to solve this because this is going to get really strange.
I would
It's
hope
gonna
that
get
you
really
weren't going to bring up an example of something that you
No, he got an example of
and
someone he had to fire. It was horrible.
yeah, the punchline here is Martin is
Miss Kelly, lie to us. Tell us how you solved.
Well,
make this a success story.
Yeah,
For
come on,
Martin's
reach down,
sake.
baby, reach down.
Thank God I don't have to stretch the truth on this one. Right?
All right,
This
all
this
right.
is a real life example. So
Yeah, I've already heard he's a big guy, intimidating, all this kind of stuff. So you don't lie.
We've already taken our names off so nobody can see us.
I don't want him finding it.
So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, in a military background or an environment, your tactical pause prevents chaos and in real battle friendly fire, because you have to have operational awareness of what's going on. In professional services, that same chaos happens. Obviously, lives are not on the line, but burnout and margin erosion are the two casualties of that chaos, right? So, how do we solve this? Well, the first thing that comes to mind, well, let's just get everybody trained up more, right? They need to learn more, they need to do more, become competent, just like Martin. Well, he's too busy to train them, but I need a leader to train a junior employee how to do something, because the experience factor lives with the senior person. And I saw Martin struggling with it. So I took the opportunity for a tactical pause. And I said, all right, time out. We've been talking about this system, this PMO that we put together for a while now. And when I talk to you, you're like, yeah, I get it, but you're still not giving me the information I need. Let me explain to you how it all comes together, how the information, the actions that you capture at as close to the point of execution as possible have 2, 3, 4 downstream effects, right? And by empowering your team to do some of these more, what you would call mundane activities, it's going to free up your time to see what folks are doing. They're going to learn through the teaching that you're able to do by getting them involved at the lowest level. It's going to make them feel like they are engaged and involved, right? Why am I doing all this? Nothing ever comes of anything I do. Okay, well, here, your task now is to do the weekly status report. Simple thing, right? But if Martin doesn't teach his staff member, his team member, how to do one, well, guess what? They're the next accidental leader. Now I'm going to have a senior manager who doesn't know how to do the simplest thing, a weekly status report. So I showed him how doing those actions were then able to also give me information that I could use for our newsletter that I used to communicate with other team members, by capturing the information that needed to on the project plan. And then it was updated with a regular cadence. And Martin, no, you don't need to do it. Have them do it. You check it. You can then ask the questions that are leveraging your experience. That doesn't look right. Or that is awesome. You thought of something I didn't even think of, and you get an attaboy. Or you're de-risking the project and seeing something before it happens. So once I showed him that full life cycle of where the information started at point of execution all the way through end of project and how it tentacles were everywhere. He's like, I get it. The light bulb went off. And he pulled his team together. I didn't have to tell him to do it. He pulled his team together and said, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, and I'm going to teach all of you how to do it right now. Set up some time, trained him on that. Pick the next thing. Again, assigned it to one person, but trained everybody. Next thing you knew, his reporting was the most timely, the most impactful, because they were actually capturing the information when it happened, not Martin 3 weeks later trying to remember what happened to fill out information and put it in the system. Okay, so he shifted from doing the work to leading the work. The team was more energized and excited. The output of the work they did, clients were still very happy. And oh, by the way, he now had time to de-risk his portfolio of projects because he could take time to talk to the clients, even if it was for a shorter period of time. He's not down stuck in the weeds. He could elevate himself, and it was his own form of a tactical pause. He's elevating himself enough to see what's going on and going, okay, I need to focus my attention there. So I'm happy to say there's a really positive outcome in there. And, you know, the feedback I got from him in a LinkedIn recommendation spoke volumes. I'm not going to toot my own horn. You want to read it, check out my LinkedIn page. But that is where I know I made a difference. I developed a leader. And to me, that's the value of a leader. When you can develop the leaders that are subordinate to you in the food chain to be just as quality a leader as you are or think yourself to be, that's making an accomplishment.
So there's a lot of great things in that story, and I mean, obviously a positive outcome and some good takeaways there. But the one that really sticks with me the most, because I think it's often the most challenging with people like that. I think we've all worked with individuals that have the same challenge, and that is you got him to take. He feels like he's too busy and he's drowning in the activities right now, but you got him to actually slow down, take a pause in order to get greater clarity that actually drives to the outcome. And we all know intuitively that works, but that is so hard to get somebody to do because it feels so counterintuitive to what they're doing and what they're feeling in the moment right now. Was there any pushback from him at that? Like, was there the selling of like, hey, no, we're going to take some time and I'm going to walk you through the steps that actually go from inception of this thing needed to be done all the way to how it gets used downstream that um, that you walked him through? I mean, was there any convincing that needed to take place there? And if so, how'd you do that?
It wasn't really convincing. I'm happy to say I think things crystallized, right? There's something my team got tired of me saying all the time, which is let's go slow to go fast, right? And basically, if you take the time to prepare when it comes time to make a decision, an important decision on the fly, it's not a problem. You can make that decision because you've taken the time to set up the foundational information that you need, right? Things always change, so you need to be prepared for that. Well, where's that foundation set? So as I look back on it, and I appreciate the question because I don't think I ever asked myself that question. Why did all of a sudden you start to get it? For the months preceding that, we were looking at individual pieces of the pie, right? Individual slices of the system. And I was trying to increase understanding and competence on those pieces of the system, right? And in all fairness, I probably should have taken more time to lay out the vision first. And not, I mean, I did the first time, but at that point, it was a non-existing system.
There's no context for it,
There's
right?
no context. So it went right over their heads. I knew it. I understood it great because I architected it, right? But for them, there was no context, right? So I showed them this piece and that piece and that piece. And they got each one of those individual things. But you know what? Now that I'm hearing it, their pushback during the time was why? Why am I doing this? It seems like extra work. When in actuality, you were just shifting work around. And in some cases, reducing the amount of work. But until Martin got to see it all together and how he could empower his team and raise himself up to the next level of visibility, once he saw that in context, it worked, right? So the lesson I'm going to say to take away from what I ended up in the right place, but took me far too long to get there. And I'm sure the guys and ladies on the team that had to listen to me for months talking about all the different pieces sure would have been better if I had taken a tactical pause and taken them through the whole vision and say, let's do that periodically. So as you see these different elements of the system coming together, it makes sense in context. So I really appreciate that question, because heck, I hadn't thought of that until just now, and I wish I had done that better.
Yeah, we you know, in our consulting business for many years, we do lots of transformational work, right? And one thing that, you know, and everybody's change management philosophies and methodologies and things like that. They all say slightly different things around this, but like one thing I always have to remind myself and tell our team as we're doing things like that is it takes a human 5 to 7 times of hearing the same thing in a slightly different way before they understand and internalize it, especially when it's asking them to make big changes to how they operate or what they're going to do, even if the outcomes are great. So you're, okay, here's our outcomes, here's my expectations, here's the intent of what I'm actually doing as a leader. And you can fall into the trap of like, okay, well, I've told my team this so many times, 2, 3 times, but often it was, people are hearing it the first time and they didn't have the context. And the second time they focus on this detail of, well, what does that mean about X, Y, and Z? And you don't get the full picture until 5 to 7 times through essentially the same story. And so I like the kind of example that you had here, but also what you called out. Seems like there's a couple of different versions of this tactical pause. Like the one that you just talked about was, hey, I need to make sure that I align everybody's outcomes, expectations around what I want as a leader. The one you gave for Martin was, hey, I need to rise above this situation of a bunch of things that are going on all simultaneously and make sure that I'm pointed in the right direction and focus on things. Do you use that term across a couple of different scenarios, or am I maybe overcomplicating it?
No, you're not overcomplicating it at all. Because the tactical pause is the mechanics of it, right? And the breaks, the tactical pauses that I've used most often, I'd say they probably roll into, call it four different time periods. So in the front end of a project, I like to do something called commander's intent, something else I took out of the military, right? As leaders, the captain of the organization doesn't have time to get to each one of his platoons and lead each one of those platoon leaders. Nor does the battalion commander have the same to do with his company commanders. That's the organizational structure as you go higher and higher, right? So you have to have commander's intent. Commander says, here's your land. This is what you're going to do. You're responsible for your left and right limits. You have autonomy inside there. Make good decisions. But you define what those left and right limits are, right? So that's how you get things kicked off. Do you have alignment between your internal team, your outcomes, your expectations with your client, with company leadership? Is everybody on the same page? So that's how you need to start things off.
Yeah,
So
it's kind
that's
of the
really,
one that we just talked about there, right?
right,
With
right,
getting the buy-in for the team. That makes sense.
right. So then an executive risk review, and it doesn't,
And
the
this is the
word
second
executive,
one.
this is the second one.
Yeah, okay.
That would be the second one. I'm calling it an executive just because that's where the position I was coming from, this executive risk review, because you need to pause execution long enough to see, am I still inside my boundaries, my left and right limits? Are we heading in the right direction? Or are we going off on a tangent? Because little increments over a long period of time, you can be way off the target, right? So you want to have course corrections as quickly as possible, and that creates alignment with your team. Again, it's an opportunity to reinforce alignment with your client as well. Once operations are done and you've completed all that, then there's an after action review. That would be your third time to stop. Now, everybody talks about after action reviews. They call it all kinds of different things. We're going to do more of this and less of that. But it stays on a piece of paper in a Google Drive. And nobody does anything with it. If you don't learn from that experience and roll it back into your center of excellence, that's why I tried to pull all these things together inside a center of excellence, a PMO that says, here's how we're going to do things. Your left and right limits. Stay inside the boundaries, but do your thing. Okay? If you don't do something with that information out of the after action review, you didn't learn anything from that pause, and you're doomed to make the exact same mistakes again. And hey, those junior folks that don't have the experience, what are they going to learn? Their experience is now going to be a track record of, we shouldn't have done that, and we keep doing it. So you're reinforcing the negative, right? And then the fourth one is really a one-on-one pause. You can do that whenever you like. Sometimes it's for a good thing, sometimes it's for corrective action. It doesn't have to be a programmed one-to-one action. There's lots of different opinions on whether weekly structured one-on-ones are great, if it should be more periodic. I find that in the highly communicative world that we have right now, the information overload, we're talking to each other so frequently. I'm okay with the opportunistic one-on-one versus the programmed one, but everybody has their reasoning and rationale. I'm sure you guys do as well. So the mix of those four pauses at the right times, and sometimes repetitive in nature, that executive risk review is going to happen multiple times during the project, right? That one-to-one pause there may be opportunities for positive and negative, dole it out at the right pace, right? But the opportunity to communicate and reinforce the positive, course correct on things that can go better. Certainly, if they're going to take the project off plan, we want to do that in a timely fashion.
Yep. No, and I like the four categories. I think everybody might relate to having done some of them, maybe with different names and things like that, or maybe without labeling it. But I, we're big fans of labeling things like that so that expectations are clear when everybody goes into it, right? Hey, we're doing an after action review. The goals and expectations of an after action review is this. The expectations of you coming into that meeting look like that, right? And we do this. I mean, we do the same thing within our firm, and when we teach clients those similar things, right? Like we clarity and consistency of this has this label on it, therefore I know what to expect, I know how to be prepared for it, and I know what that conversation is going to yield and why we're doing it. I think that's having the labels like what you just kind of walked through there is very helpful. So Kelly, as we've kind of talked about all of this here, I've got a question before I ask you to wrap up. As as you as you think about all of these different things, and I love that you've taken your experience, and we talk to people with all sorts of diverse backgrounds, and one of my favorite things is hearing how you've taken something that's unrelated to professional services and said, okay, like here's how it fits in, here's how it fits my leadership style, this is how it fits managing clients or whatever the case is. What's the one or two things that you would suggest to another leader that says, hey, I want to adopt some of the things Kelly did here, right? I want to be intentional with my leaders instead of accidental with them. I want to use this tactical pause. I want to use some of these different things. What's one or two things that you'd suggest somebody try to implement immediately? And what kind of outcomes should they expect to get out of taking a couple of these recommendations from you?
I think the important thing that folks need to find is take the time to make sure your underlying project information is correct, right? Everybody wants to go fast. Let's get it done. Let's get the next thing done. Let's get the next thing started.
And AI is only making that more of a pressure.
It's like you read my mind. It's just like you read my mind, because that's what I'm hearing every day from people. Let's go faster. AI, make it go faster. I'm like, folks, AI is a force multiplier. It can make mistakes faster. You can get done a whole lot faster, right? So if you go slow to go fast, if you make sure your team is aligned, their expectations are clear, and the information they're providing in whatever their level of the organization or their level of the process is, well, then that's going to help amplify things in a positive direction. So, as a profession, leaders and consultants create value through judgment and systems thinking, right? You're trying to help people see the value in what they do and doing it in a consistent way, because then they will have consistent outcomes. And our role as leaders in this AI world is to bring clarity. There's lots of noise. So use that experience factor that we have to help with the judgment side. The AI is making recommendations, and some people are letting it make decisions, which, until you can validate that it's making good decisions, that's another topic for another day, right? But for the foreseeable future, we need to help bring that judgment to make sense of now this deluge of information that could be right or it could be wrong. And can we use our experience to spot where it may be off target, and then let the system figure out where it is. Okay, now let's course correct. But somebody still has to be in that judgment loop.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I don't know if I told this story on the podcast or not. It was maybe a year or so ago now, and it was kind of when not before, I mean, it was before like mass adoption of a lot of the AI tools, but there were certainly lots of people that were using it. And we had, I think it was a PS leader at the time that I was having this conversation with. And he came up to me one day and he's like, hey, he's like, I've been talking to you about all these things. We've been doing it. And like, he'd been having all these conversations with me. He was like, hey, that's a really weird thing to do, but like, this is a part of our strategy. It's like a $50-60 million company. And he's like, but we're doing it. And then he's like, and then the next day we'll show up and he's like, the CEO's doing some new weird thing. And he's like, the strategy doesn't foot. And this is a company that had done a good job building up to a certain level. And then one day he called me and he's like, hey, the CEO basically grabbed the entire executive team and brought everybody into the room and admitted that he had been using ChatGPT, I think it was at the time, but you could have used any of them as hey, just tell me what to do, right? And make decisions and be the strategic advisor for the business. And it made all these decisions, but it had, right, as we've all now grown accustomed to learning, right? It's like it doesn't have any of the context of the history of the previous conversations, and it's all deterministic and all these kinds of things, and so, or predictive, right? And so it's like the business strategy decisions were just all over the place. But and to your point, like our role in PS and anything like this, and especially with AI, it's all comes down to judgment, and the human's role in that whole process still remains there. And in this case, they were not using it, and so the entire executive team felt like they were kind of the tail on a dog that was was not really purposeful about what it was doing, but they course corrected. I wish I could share a little bit more details about it, but it was a very funny not to be involved in it, but kind of like ironically funny story at the time, because it was just, yeah, apparently the CEO is making all company strategic decisions and just informing us using ChatGPT as its main source of decision making. So I think we've all learned a little bit from it, but your point still holds really true, which is our role is judgment in this process. No matter if we're using AI to inform decision making or anything else, a leader's role is that judgment layer. Well, Kelly, this has been great. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, your expertise, and perspective with us. And looking forward to trying to apply some of these labels, put some of this stuff in practice ourselves, and hopefully others can take away some similar things that I did. So thank you for your time.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you. Thanks, John.
Great conversation with Kelly, and very happy that he was able to join us and have that conversation. As we mentioned at the top, right, I found it very helpful that he was giving the audience some guidance on how to be purposeful about developing leaders. And as you mentioned earlier, right, that's a topic we spend a lot of time focusing on at the Consultant's Way. And so I am excited that we were able to share that. If you enjoyed this conversation and you want to hear more like it, follow us, subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, podcasts, all of those fun things. If you want to get in touch with Dean or myself, then you can find us at our respective LinkedIn pages. If you want to check out what we're doing in terms of leadership development and consulting development, you can find us over at the Consultant's Way at consultantsway.com. And you can always email the show at podcast@consultantsway.com if you need to get a hold of us or have guest recommendations for the future. So thanks everybody, and look forward to seeing you next time.